This is Matthew McConaughey,
Natalie Portman,
James Patterson,
Michael Ian Black,
and you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Melanie, welcome to Five Questions.
Dan, I am thrilled to be here. Your work is incredibly inspiring.
Well, I appreciate that, and so is your work. And what originally inspired you to become a philanthropist, and why do you continue to be one?
That is a really great question. What inspired me the most is watching other people be philanthropists. I came to understand the joy that they get out of their work. Believe it or not, when I was just a kid, I would read the society pages of the Los Angeles Times. And I was always fascinated with the people they would spotlight, like Buffy Chandler. And she was just a civic-minded woman who got great things done. She raised money for Los Angeles to have a music center. And she was very classy, very aggressive. And that caught my attention. And I think an important point here is I did not grow up with wealth. I was lower middle class. But my mom and dad both instilled in me the ethos to give back. And I know if I didn't hear it once, I heard it at least 1,000,000 times. You better leave the world a better place than you found it. And I remember as a kid, I think I was about 7 years old, I walked door to door with the March of Dimes can, asking my neighbors for money. And I was taught growing up that we have a responsibility to every person on this planet. And, at some point in our lives, we all need a helping hand. Nobody gets away unscathed. And, Dan, I like to put out that Webster's dictionary defines philanthropy as the love of humanity. That definition is certainly not tied to the number of zeros on a check. And so by that definition, everyone should and can be a philanthropist. Continuing to be a philanthropist is what I hope to do till I take my last breath because of the great joy that it provides me. And also knowing that what I'm able to do is something that does benefit humanity. And I like to say that philanthropy is the rent I pay for the space I take up and the air I breathe.
And giving is all relative, right? Like if you
Yes.
are not from great means and
It doesn't
you give
matter.
a small fraction, it's still something. And also giving can mean different things to different people. It doesn't always have to be money. It could be time
That's
and
right.
volunteering.
Time, talent, it's so many things. As long as you love humanity, you give back.
And over the past few years, you've donated to both the News Literacy Project and the McPherson College, as well as joined the board of Altacy.
Correct.
What goes into your decision about what industries, institutions, and causes you invest in and your personal involvement?
Another good question. Quite a bit goes into our decision-making process. We tend to do a great deal of due diligence. To me, the philanthropic dollars are near and dear, and the due diligence is very important. So we want to know what the mission of the organization is, the fiscal outlook over the years of the organization that it's been in business, their stability, fiscal and otherwise, their leadership, how long have the leaders been there, and what the turnover rate is with the staff as well as the leadership. One of our criteria is we look to make significant impact, and helping an organization create systemic change and bring that change to scale, as we've done with the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. That's our mission. In the case of McPherson College, we were helping an organization solidify its future. Going to News Literacy Project, that was a desire to find an organization that had the tools especially in the classrooms, to help save democracy. We are focused on driving change and tackling our most pressing problems, from climate change, public education, saving democracy.
Yeah, you start off very bold. Here's like the biggest causes that we think have the most impact on probably the widest range of people. And then you go deeper and you do research, you and maybe you have a team that kind of uncovers, okay, who's doing what and what type of need that, what type of need do they help? And then you kind of go from there. So it's very, very well thought out. It doesn't happen in, a week or anything.
No. And we also look for ways that we're going to help the most vulnerable members of society. And again, that speaks to where the greatest impact will be. That again is the partnership, where all 20 of our schools, they're in the most underserved and most often overlooked communities in Los Angeles. It's also like Homeboy Industries, which is the largest gang rehabilitation and reentry program in the world. Our society just tends to throw away these people and just writes them off. And for us, that's unacceptable. And it's about giving people a second, a third, and if they need a fourth chance. That's what democracy is about. Homeboy Industries is incredibly successful in what they do and how they do it. And it's also very, very cost effective. And it's a much needed entity. When I was growing up, public dollars covered everything. Today, that is not true. And so philanthropy has the opportunity to step in and not just fill in the gaps between the two, but to make sure that our most vulnerable are not overlooked and have the same opportunities as everyone else to meet their potential. I one of the things that is one of my favorite things to say is, person's zip code should not determine their destiny.
I love that. And what are your insights in the state of philanthropy today? And how do these economic factors we face, such as inflation, impact charitable giving as a whole? Like, do you see that people are donating less or a smaller percentage because they have to deal with the higher cost of living?
Well, it's absolutely astounding to me, because there is over $1.2 trillion parked, warehoused, tax sheltered in foundations, and more than 200 billion in donor advised funds in DAFs. What is even more astonishing to me is that every penny of that money has been tax deducted. I think it says a lot about the state of philanthropy today. Money is not flowing to charities with the pace that is needed today. It doesn't reflect where society is at today. I'm not going to entirely blame the philanthropists, the foundations, or the DAFs necessarily, because the tax laws that govern philanthropy were written in 1969. Different society at that time. They were written so that it incentivized people to set aside money for charitable purposes. But that incentive was the tax deductions. What they forgot to do, the laws never took into account that you have to move the money out. And yeah, foundations have the 5% rule. It's such a convoluted formula, by the way. It's awful. And here's the kicker. You can write a check from your foundation for that 5% after you figured out what it's going to be by their convoluted formula. And write that check to a DAF. There are no rules that govern when DAFs have to take that money out and give it away. They never have to. Sit there forever. And the way I've answered this to you is really more about public policy, but I do have a few personal feelings about philanthropy. I've never felt that Los Angeles is a particularly charitable city, as it should be, given the wealth that's in Los Angeles.
Isn't it the fifth largest economy?
In the world, And when you read the Philanthropy 50, the list of the most generous philanthropists, Los Angeles is really not well represented. On average, you're going to see more Northern California donors, which makes the Bay Area really more charitable than Los Angeles.
Interesting. You've made a pledge of $400 million with your husband to support various causes, some of which you've already outlined. How do you work in partnership with your husband, Richard, to turn that pledge into actionable results?
That's really easy, Dan. We have a division of responsibility here. He makes the money, I give it away. No, just joking. We actually do make our decisions on philanthropic dollars together. We do take it very seriously. We have meetings together with organizations, and we do a very substantial amount, as I mentioned earlier, of due diligence. With the partnership, we spent 9 months on our due diligence, because we do take it so seriously. And it goes back to their patterns of fiscal responsibility, leadership, the things we spoke about a little bit earlier.
And a lot of those are intertwined. Like, I study labor.
Absolutely.
And if you have a high attrition rate, typically you can point the finger to leadership.
That's right. So yeah, it's the leadership that we spoke about earlier. So we look for that very visionary leadership that has continuity and consistency, because every time you start over with a new leader, you start over with a new plan. And there's no continuity and consistency in that. So to make it efficient, it's got to have very, very good visionary leadership. One example that comes to my mind is Michael Schneider, who's the president of McPherson College in Kansas. I talked about him in an interview with the Chronicle, and I said it's really an art to make a stakeholder out of a donor before they even know they're a stakeholder. And to me, that's what I consider new age philanthropy. It's what all the development people should be doing. It's antiquated. We're working in a very antiquated way. Michael and McPherson College really do represent a new model for how to fundraise. And I mentioned to the Chronicle after that article came out that should be the Bible for every conference or meeting held on fundraising, because it really goes to how we need to do it today. And McPherson, for example, has gotten Richard to roll up his sleeves. He's serving on the board of trustees of the college, and he is focusing in on the campus master planning. It suits his skill set incredibly well with real estate. And when you mention action, that's really a special part of philanthropy that I love. And both of us really are hands-on. I go out to schools and spend time in classrooms with the partnership, with our partnership team, principals. I serve on the board of trustees of Altasea. In fact, this Friday, I'll be at Altasea in an event with former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You probably see that being involved, not just donating, ensures that donation goes the longest way.
Yeah, and it's not about looking over their shoulder, because if I felt I had to look over their shoulder, I probably wouldn't have given them money to begin with. There's got to be a trust factor, but I'm lucky that I have more time to be hands-on, but Richard does make the time as well. And it's not just so we can know what's going on, where we've donated, but importantly, and this is a really important point, we help the organizations leverage and grow by being involved with them, because we become their ambassadors. We're on the ground, we're rolling our sleeves up with them so we can talk very, I'll use the word intelligently about them. And we become stakeholders and thought partners with them. So you're right, we don't just mail in a check. Now, if one of us is very opposed to an idea of a contribution for a nonprofit, we don't do it. And that has happened. But overall, we are both exceedingly pleased with the philanthropy that we do. We feel it's been very responsible. It gives us a great deal of pleasure and it's very rewarding. And we are exceedingly grateful for the opportunity to be philanthropists and choose organizations that we know will have the impact that we're looking for.
And what's your best piece of career advice?
Oh, this is a fun one. The best piece of advice is be philanthropists. It has nothing to do with how many zeros on the check, as we mentioned earlier. And it comes in so many ways and forms: time, talent, treasure. We should all view philanthropy in this way because it's really how we lift each other up. It's how we level the playing field. It's how we act in a very civil, kind, respectful way to each other in our society. Last week, I was speaking at Bakersfield College in their speaker series. And I ended the speech by offering career advice that actually surprised some of the students, because I said, remember the California redwoods, trees, but not just any trees. These are majestic trees that grow to 275 feet tall. The oldest coastal redwood is 2,520 years old. These are trees that go 13 stories high. What I also pointed out is that the redwoods have incredibly poor root systems. It's hard to believe it, but these giant trees often only have roots that are 5 to 6 feet deep. So how do they stand for this tall for thousands of years? How do they do that? The answer is really simple. And I think it's very much a metaphor for what society should look like, be. They stand in groves. They stand together. Their roots actually merge and become intertwined. They strengthen each other. They don't stand alone. So part of my career advice is become a redwood.
I love that. And yeah, we need each other more than ever before, especially as we endure so many, hardships economically, socially, et cetera.
Totally.
So it's very timely.
Well, and a past guest of yours, Ariana Huffington, shares in her book, Thrive. Givers also end up getting ahead at work. Nice guys don't have to finish last, and they don't. And I love that in Thrive, she has these proof points and studies that show that people who give their time and effort to others actually achieve more success. So be a philanthropist. You'll help yourself, you'll help humanity. And when all is said and done, we're one race, the human race. We're just much more successful and better off when we help each other. And, everyone should be able to take the joy that you get out of this and start your path of philanthropy now, and your career will flourish.
Well, that's great advice. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.